trade authority, but Zoe is intimidating.
As the early access videos have been rolling out for Starfield, I decided to actively ignore all of it and jump into this game blind, and I've had a pretty interesting gameplay experience because of it. That being said, if you're gonna jump into it for yourself, whether it's on Game Pass or the $100 special deluxe digital edition, whatever they're calling it, there's some things you should definitely keep in mind. Let's just address the elephant in the room. The performance over here on PC is pretty bad. I know Bethesda games get a bad rap for their performance, but this is simultaneously the best looking and worst performing Bethesda game I've ever played. Ton of loading screens. You might be in an indoor section where you're getting a smooth 60 FPS and then it'll just chop up and drop around to 40, 30 for no reason, seemingly. You go out into one of the gorgeous sprawling open areas outside, you're struggling to maintain a 30 FPS there. And this is if you're even getting 30 FPS. I had to do some serious screen resolution gymnastics to get this game even functioning on my laptop. And I'm running an Asus Zephyrus G15 with a 3070 in it. I don't have a high-end gaming laptop, but it's pretty decent, pretty modern, right? There's people with high-end gaming rigs, multi-$1,000 PC setups who are struggling to get 80 FPS on this game. I had to download a DLSS mod for it to actually take advantage of my card to try to upscale the game a little bit to get better performance. It was flickering in some areas if I didn't have a minimum screen resolution set, so I had to manually change my monitor, aka my TV's resolution to 1440p, and then I had to scale that down, and even then, I'm still struggling with the frame rate. It's ridiculous. I mean, hell, even going from like low settings to high settings had a negligible difference. You're just gonna get bad performance in some areas regardless of what you're playing it on. Interestingly though, the Steam Deck can run it, which is pretty cool. But I think this performance issue isn't a matter of the game is just so graphically intense that nothing can run it. I think it's just a sign that this creation engine is tired, man. They've been building games with this engine for decades, and like I said, this is the best looking Bethesda game I've ever played. Their scene geometry and character models and things that are so heavily detailed, it rivals Cyberpunk's environments in my opinion. It's very good looking. And because of those bigger environments where they have all of this detail crammed into it, it's just struggling it, man. I don't know how the Xbox runs, but if it's running a stable 30 FPS, that might be the best way to play this game right now. No joke, man. I can see why they wanted to lock it to 30 FPS now. Makes sense. But back to that creation engine, like I was saying, I think all the problems with performance and the limitations of this game tie back to this engine. There was some talk in comment sections that I was reading from modders that were saying this is the reason that you couldn't have drivable vehicles on planets, and I think it may also be the reason that you can't seamlessly lift off from the landing pad on Earth up into space and just kind of seamlessly go wherever you want. You kind of have to teleport into rooms in different sections of the game because the engine that you're playing on just can't handle streaming this all into one solid environment. It just can't do it. It's a beautiful game in my opinion, and at first you may not even believe that this is a creation engine game, but once you start playing it, it plays like every other creation engine game, Fallout, Skyrim. You can sit in a chair and wait for time to pass. You can go and rent a room from a bar, and if somebody's sleeping in it, it's an owned bed. You know, all of those little quirks. You got your base building and some other things and crafting systems, and it all kind of works the same way as it did in previous games. Albeit probably more detailed and refined, but it's still the creation engine. You still have these awkward facial animations with NPCs where they're like staring at you dead in the face and they kind of look half numb. You're gonna have loading screens as previously mentioned, you're gonna have bugs. And I guess that leads us into the gameplay of Starfield.
Once I get a fancy corner office in Mass, you should come over.
And again, just ripping the band-aid off here, I think my biggest gripe with Starfield's gameplay is probably the space exploration. And this again comes back to the creation engine thing. I think the team was very ambitious with what they wanted to achieve here, and I think they were heavily limited by what they were working with. When you go into space, you kind of teleport from planet to planet and sector to sector, and it feels kind of disconnected to me. You're supposed to feel like you're making these huge voyages, and it just kind of really feels like the control's taken away from you, and it's just, again, a loading screen. And once you're in that space section, it just kind of feels like you're floating in one place with a couple of objects spawned around you. You'll spawn into space, into a planet that you're going to, and you're just kind of floating in this skybox with maybe a ship out into the distance that wants to talk to you, or some other piece of thing that you want to interact with, and they're just kind of sitting here floating in the air right in front of you. It doesn't really feel like you're traveling through space. Like any kind of movement in space feels really awkward. There's some some dogfighting sections, and it kind of just feels like you're just sitting there and watching things come at you, more so than you're actually physically moving around in the space. Of course, I don't know if that's legitimately how it's working. I don't think it is, but that's how it feels as you're playing it. And then again, as you load into a planet, you're in this little floating section, and then you have to load again as you land on the planet. So you're just kind of loading from section to section to section. And this isn't really immersion breaking for me on the on-foot stuff, but it's pretty immersion breaking on the space exploration stuff, because it just feels like they wanted to do more with this and they just couldn't. This is like they're just working with the best they got situation. Sometimes you'll dock your ship onto a bigger mothership, and in between you actually docking your ship on there, it plays a little animation, then you go in, then it plays a little animation, then you come out. And I just wish there was a little bit more there. I think I should also mention I only have about 10 hours, give or take, playing Starfield, and I'm only in the early stages of the game. Me and the couple of people that were with me playing this were just kind of mainly messing around, trying to break the game and fight the cops. And that brings me to one of the things that I actually do like about Starfield, because again, I'm saying some negative stuff about it, but there's definitely a lot of good here. I don't want to make it sound like this is all doom and gloom, let's write it off. Because one thing they did really well is that gunplay, man. The gunplay in this game makes you feel like you're not even playing a Bethesda game. I think they consulted id Software on this, and it shows. Not only are they just good looking guns, the models and animations are done very well. You get things like little battery symbols and ammo counters that light up on LED screens, and that all again looks impressive. But the gunplay just feels like you're playing a different game, like you're actually playing a shooter.
State your business.
Shooting feels tight and satisfying. I'd say it's a little more on the arcadey side, because when you're shooting enemies, they have a little health bar that pops up, kind of like an RPG deal. And it just works really well, dude. Using guns is actually really fun in this game. There's weapon crafting, which again, I haven't gotten into because I haven't played that much, but there's gonna be attachments and things you can add on the guns. I'll have to experiment with that. You got melee weapons, which are, they're melee weapons in a first-person shooter. You know how that kind of deal is. I haven't really played too much with the stealth mechanics and the action mechanics and really seen how well those work against each other, but the gunplay's fun. Gun sounds are good, gun animations are good. That's all satisfying. Although I haven't been able to swap weapons on the fly. Anytime you want to use a different weapon, you got to go into the menu to change your weapon. I'm hoping that there's a skill that you can get to actually swap weapons in, like you would do in any other game. There's a skill tree with a lot of options and a lot of things for you to change and upgrade. In typical Bethesda fashion, you got a lot to play with there. Again, I haven't gotten too deep into it, so I don't want to speak too much on that, but it seems like there's a lot for you to do. Character customization, fairly detailed. You can add a million different facial features, and then you can tweak those facial features and sculpt them a little bit. I think somebody made Todd Howard in this game. So if you're into character creation, that's gonna be pretty fun. And in typical Bethesda fashion, you're playing a first-person RPG. You got a lot of dialogue options. You get into these multi-section conversations where you can change the outcome of it by persuading people in different ways. I'm sure some of the best missions that you come across in the game are gonna be ones that aren't on your main storyline. Like I got deep into this one, which has been my favorite so far, by just randomly talking to a guy where I probably could have just missed out on it if I had never walked up to him, which is pretty cool. I love that kind of stuff that you just find organically. And I believe that something that I'm doing in this mission could assist me in playing the game in different ways. I don't want to spoil it, but there's just different things you can do within the game when it comes to carrying certain types of cargo, and maybe those are restricted to you having certain types of things that you get by playing in certain types of ways. I feel like this is going to be very story rich, and there's going to be a lot of content to explore here. Again, I'm like 10 hours into it. I feel like I've barely scratched the smallest inch of the surface. I haven't even gotten into the crafting, into the going to different planets and mining for materials. Again, that's a whole thing. And I feel like it's a whole thing that you could probably mostly skip if you wanted to. You know, like if you just kind of wanted to run and gun your way through the story, I guess you could do that. It seems like there's going to be a lot of versatility to play how you want. I think that's going to be very beneficial to the game. I'm liking it, dude. And for 10 bucks a month on Game Pass, you can't beat it. When it comes to buying it though, I would be very cautious when it comes to the PC version of this game. If you're gonna buy the game, buy it on Steam, see how it runs. If it doesn't run well within those 2 hours, refund it. Or just spend 10 bucks on Game Pass and play it for a month and see how you feel about it. And if you don't like it, what'd you lose, $10? Just wanted to share my impressions of Starfield with you. Pretty cool game. If you like Bethesda games, you're obviously gonna like this one. I've never beaten Skyrim. I've probably gotten halfway through Skyrim's story, and That's one of my favorite games, so that's telling you something. Anyways, if you're familiar with the channel, you can see we're in a different room now. I've been working on some stuff, and I know I've been behind on videos, but just let me cook, all right? I got it coming, I promise. The stuff's in the works. If you are new here, I do gaming retrospectives, impressions, and some VR stuff. Go check it out on my channel. Anyways, thank you guys for watching. What are you thinking of Starfield? Let me know in the comments, and I'll catch you later.